Hello and welcome. How stable is Chechnya as its hardline president tightens his grip on the republic and cracks down on dissent? The story of the tension in the region has been off the global media's radar for some time, but for Chechens, the future remains very much in question. The list of accusations against Chechnya's young president, Ramzan Kadyrov, includes suppressing dissent through torture, kidnappings and murder. Human rights groups say Mr. Kadyrov's brutality has scared away critics, but could ignite a lingering Islamic insurgency. Vladimir Putin appointed Ramzan Kadyrov president of Chechnya in 2007, 3 years after his father, Ahmed Kadyrov, was assassinated. The family had originally fought against Moscow in the First Chechen War from 1994 to 96, but they joined hand with Russian forces at the beginning of the Second War in 1999 to fight against Chechen rebels. Ever since, Moscow has poured money into Chechnya, and Ramzan Kadyrov has rebuilt the region with impressive speed. His supporters say he has brought jobs and peace, but critics argue his so-called stability has come at a price. Human rights groups allege that in return for his loyalty to Moscow, Russia has allowed President Kadyrov to transform Chechnya into a totalitarian fiefdom where any opposition is ruthlessly crushed. So today we ask, how close is Chechnya to another violent upheaval, and what knock-on effect could this have on the stability of Russia? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email, and we'll take your phone calls on the show as well. Joining me now from Amman in Jordan is Mohammed Adil Shishani, Vice President of the World Chechen Congress, an organization that encourages negotiations for a peaceful solution in Chechnya. From Hartford here in the US is Professor Emma Gilligan of the University of Connecticut, where she specializes in 20th century Soviet history, human rights and genocide. She's also author of the book Terror in Chechnya, Russia and the Tragedy of Civilians in War. And from London we have Lord Frank Judd, the former Council of Europe rapporteur for Chechnya, who recently returned from an assessment mission to the region. I welcome you all to the show, and Professor Gilligan, if I could start with you there, and sorry, actually I'm going to start with Mohammed Shishani, in Amman, Jordan, and ask, how stable is Chechnya, sir? How well is it holding together?
Well, in my opinion, it's not holding well together at all. We hear all this news about the economic development that Ramzan Kadyrov has initiated in Chechnya, but on the other side, concerning human rights and self-expression is completely prohibited. Unemployment, they say, is almost about 70%, and the only people who are working are the people who are working in the government of Kadyrov. So the war is still continuing on. The freedom fighters are in the mountains, and they mount attacks from now and then. And if there is war going on and there is no peace in the country because the people are not happy with what is going on, if their dissent is not allowed, then what is the use of having high buildings or high-rise buildings or nice streets or what have you? The whole idea of the war in Chechnya was for self-determination and for an independent Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. So the people of Chechnya will determine their future. They'll determine what they want to do with their government, and so on.
All right. Well, let me bring Professor Emma Gilligan in here and ask, you know, the description of the regime of Ramzan Kadyrov is often described as a neo-Soviet dictatorship. How close is that in truth to? I mean, is that a fair description of what he's set up now?
Yes, I think that it's an extremely authoritarian regime set up in Chechnya. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Ramzan Kadyrov certainly has his private army, and as the previous speaker just pointed out, that the main concern of human rights activists is the secret detention, is the torture, and more instrumentally is his inability really to be able to control the situation. The underground resistance movement does continue to conduct attacks on both Chechen police officers and organizations and security agencies, also in Nazran, in Ingushetia and in Dagestan itself. So there is great concern about the lack of freedom of association and freedom of the press.
And Professor, how would you say he's regarded by the majority of Chechen people then?
I think that's very, very difficult to tell. I mean, there is certainly a cult of personality around Ramzan Kadyrov. One only has to look at the photographs of the cities, the huge photographs of him himself, who is gaining the status of a cult figure, or at least trying to gain the status of a cult figure. But there are also those who recognise that those who oppose Ramzan Kadyrov, those who oppose his policies or express concern about the human rights situation, are under threat and seriously fear for their lives.
Let me bring in Lord Frank Judd here. And Lord Judd, I wonder if the critics are right about President Kadyrov being responsible for murder and torture and kidnappings and so on. Why is this being allowed to go on? Why is there no more of a sort of public challenge of what's going on?
Well, first of all, I think we have to look at ourselves in the West. This is part of an international reality. We should be speaking very firmly to Chechnya and indeed to the Russian government, because, of course, Chechnya has a significance way beyond Chechnya itself. The issues of Chechnya are already spilling over into Ingushetia and the wider region. And of course, it becomes a token in the whole global confrontation. My position is quite clear from a lifetime of international work and work in my own community. A human rights option is not a sort of soft, nice, liberal concept. It's an absolute indispensable priority for a stable, sustainable society. If you have human rights, extremists will be marginalized. If there's an absence of human rights, extremists will be able to gain recruits. The policy at the moment is inexplicable in terms of logic, because it drives people into the hands of the extremists. Yes, the building is very impressive. The mosque is striking and amazing how they built it in 2 years, but that makes the reality, the qualitative reality of that society, all the more disturbing. Targeted assassinations are reported to us repeatedly, as are indeed extrajudicial detention centres, torture, the burning of the homes of people who are related to those who are suspect, the failure to bring investigations which are initiated to any kind of convincing conclusion. All this is not the way to build a stable society.
All right, let me ask Mr. Shishani then, when it comes to the reports of President Kadyrov reaching out to the more liberal media, trying to engage more with potential opponents and so on, to what degree is this him trying to just soften his hardline image then? Does there seem to be a turning point in his behavior?
Well, I really don't think that he even tries to contact or to approach people who disagree with him. He only pulls around him people who agree with him completely. And as we mentioned previously, dissent is not allowed at all. If you disagree with him, then you are against him, and punishment will be following that action. So you know, he is not open to anyone who is liberal, as Lord Judd said. And when he visited Chechnya recently, and he asked to see Kadyrov, Kadyrov declined to meet with Lord Judd and his company. Why? Because he knows Lord Judd is going to criticize him, and he knows the position of Lord Judd defending the human rights of the Chechen people.
Okay, Professor Gilligan, has anyone visibly tried to challenge President Kadyrov?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, has there been any visible opponent sort of figures or anything? Anyone has?
Well,
go ahead.
Yes, I think really one of his greatest opponents was Salim Yamadeev, who was killed last year in Dubai, and he was head of the Vostok battalion, who were responsible for trying to track down members of the Chechen resistance movement. So Yamadeev, in a sense, was probably Ramzan Kadyrov's only serious opponent politically, as far as I know, and his death under very suspicious circumstances, I think, has removed any potential opposition at this particular moment within his more immediate circle.
Now, Lord Judd, how does Ramzan Kadyrov compare with his father, who was the president before him, who was assassinated in 2004, Ahmed Kadyrov. How do the two compare?
Well, the first thing to say is that when I was doing that rapporteur's job, however critical I was, his father was self-confident enough and big enough in that sense always to meet me, and we had very honest discussions together. I was very disappointed that it wasn't possible to meet the president, because I wanted to put it to him very clearly that his policies were in fact provoking the very thing that he says he's concerned about. And it was a pity we didn't have that opportunity. I don't like just addressing the president through the media. I like talking with the person to whom I want to put some issues. Right. Now, of course, Chechnya looks on the surface more stable than it did 7 years ago when I was last there, but I am utterly convinced that it is an unreal stability, and it's based upon fear and tyranny. And as has been said, opposition, criticism is not accepted. We had a very big meeting in the universities, standing room only, 700 students, wonderful you might say, except that I am the governor of the London School of Economics, and indeed I'm involved in two other universities closely in this country. It wasn't a bit like a proper university meeting. Clearly the questions were planted. Clearly, as I have gathered, people were warned the day before to be very careful about not raising spontaneous issues. The whole thing is very cleverly and sinisterly controlled. It's a sinister society, and that's a shame, because a society that's capable of physical recovery in the way that they have recovered with their building and their mosque and the ready could be, if it addressed itself to the issue, a model of how human rights should be. But my God, there's a long way to go before that'll be true. Okay, well, we've got a caller on the line from Kenya. Oleg, thanks for your patience. What would you like to ask?
I have an impression that Lord Judd does not understand the reality of Russian society and Chechnya itself. He's a little bit trying to take all Western values and put them into Russia, into Chechnya, and he thinks that will work, that is applicable. But what do people need in Iraq right now, for example? Do they need human rights right away, or they need political stability, economical growth, and then human society, civil society will probably come?
That's a very interesting point. I'm going to put that to Lord Judd. As soon as we've come back from this break, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with an answer to Oleg's question.